I can hear you. I don't know that the room can hear you. We don't hear you through the speakers, Mr. Gooch. I have you on speakerphone. I guess if anyone can't hear you and wants to know what you're saying, I can relay the message. My apologies to everybody here. This worked at 2:30, so of course it's not going to work at 6:30.
Okay, well, yes, that will call the meeting to order. Can they hear that?
Yes, sir. I'm getting head nods.
Alec, will you lead the invocation?
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you tonight for letting us come. Thank you for all the blessings that you've given us in our lives and in our country. Lord, please put a blanket of protection across our country and across our students and protect them from COVID and all the nastiness that goes around in our world. Help us tonight to do the school's business and keep everything working through you. In your most heavenly name I pray. Amen.
No, sir, no one for public forum, so we're to item 4, consideration of the Iola ISD school audit. If you don't mind, if you stand here where we have everybody stand for line. I'm just going to put this here so Mr. Gooch can hear you as you're presenting the audit. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm Molly Abley with Ashley and Rody, the outside third-party auditors. For some of the new board members, we come in about once a year and perform our audit, and this was the audit as of August 31st, 2020, so last school year. On page 6 of this bound report is our audit opinion. We are issuing an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion we can give. It states that everything here is presented fairly in all material respects. And I'll go through a couple of highlights, and feel free to stop me and ask some questions if you need to. And I think anyone off the phone, if you can get that.
Hang up on us today. We're here. Technology is a wonderful thing.
On page 10, this is the same information, just in a summarized form of page 13 and 14, but I do like to point it out because this is the only spot really in your audit report that compares last year to this year. Now, there's a little bit of difference in these two statements, the statement of net position and the changes in net position, simply because this is district-wide. It's everything for the district pushed together all in one. That includes your debt, that includes your assets, that includes the pension and OPEB liability, which I know you don't typically see until a year. But all of those information is here combined, and you can kind of see the changes throughout the year of the whole school district, and your ending net position is just over the $1.9 million. Some of this is a little distorted because it does take into account the entries, the report entries that we have to make for the OPEB and the pension liability that is required to be reported. And you can see that detail actually on page 13. They're kind of halfway through the page, through that page, in the middle of the page there. And that's something that you don't typically see from day to day. It's not part of your operations. It's just something that we have to come in at year end and record for report purposes. So I really like to focus on the general fund, which is your operating fund of the school district. If you flip to page 15, that is where that fund information begins. Going down kind of that first column there, your cash in the general fund increased about $1.2 million compared to last year. Your total assets increased about $844,000 compared to last year. If you go all the way down to the page, your unassigned fund balance in the general fund at August 31st was just over $2.6 million. Now, if you compare that up to your cash number, you can see that they're almost equal. So you're highly liquid. You've got 98% of your fund balance is in cash. It's there if you need it. If you have expenditures that come up, it is there and useful to you. The unassigned fund balance compared to your annual expenditures is about 51%. That is a healthy fund balance. TEA likes to see about 24%. That's what they consider a healthy fund balance, and you're sitting at about 51, so about half of your cash sitting there available to you. You flip 2 pages over to page 17. Kind of go over some changes in the general fund for the current year. Your overall revenues were up just over $500,000, and 417 of that was in your state money. That was your foundation that increased. We knew that was going to increase, so that's how it affected at year end. Your total expenditures were up compared to last year, as you expected them to be. The House Bill 3 changes came in. That was the majority of the changes in your Function 11. It increased about $543,000. Most all of that between Function 11, 23, and 31 is payroll billing. All had to do with the House Bill changes. Of course, your student transportation increased about $87,000, and you purchased 2 new vehicles, and you purchased an AC for the cafeteria under Function 51. You kind of increased that. So toward the bottom of your page, your net change in general fund balance was just over the $800,000, which brought you back to your almost 2.7 in your general fund balance. Any questions on any of that? The notes were just rolled forward from prior year. There were no new disclosures, thankfully, this year that we had to provide, so that's nice. Page 40, well, I'd like to look at your budget. It's always a useful tool when you're looking at the general fund information. And it'll kind of show you where that increase of $800,000 came from. If you look in column 2 there, you actually budgeted and expected to increase your fund balance just over $374,000 for the year. And if you look to the right next to that in column 3, that your actual was the $800,000 that we just talked about. Most of that was that you stayed under budget in your expenditures. You were under budget about $287,000. And you received a little more in the state revenue than you expected to. So you received just a little bit more than expected. So all in all, for what this year has been, you've had a good, decent year as far as your financials are concerned. I know that is probably not a huge concern for you this year, but there is a letter just stuck in the back of this report. This is some required communication. If we had any issues or concerns or problems, we'd have to report that to you. And of course, we did not, everything. As far as it could be, went smoothly. This year, we kind of changed it up and we did everything remotely. We didn't come out here and visit them, too much, but we will try to do that next year. Hopefully, we can come back and come out and see everyone. So, but everything went well. The adjustments are attached to that letter. There was nothing unusual, just some year-end reporting changes and a couple of little items that are typical for smaller schools. So nothing out of the ordinary. You sitting on that page right there reminded me that your first rating indicators on the last page did change this year. So the very last page of this report are updated first rating questionnaires compared to last year. All of your first rating information changes for this current year. I think all of those are different compared to last year. Overall? Any questions?
Board members, any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Gooch will take you back to my seat.
Okay.
The audit, is that something we consider for approval? Is that just presented to the board for approval? So I'd like to present the audit for the 2019-2020 school year to the board. Recommend that they approve that as presented.
Okay, I'll move to approve the audit report as presented.
Second.
Yes, second by Scott, and I'm raising my hand. Is there any discussion on approving the audit report as presented? No discussion, those in favor raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0.
Item number 5 is the budget amendments for 2020-2021 school year. I think that's a typo on our agenda there. Ms. Tim, is that correct? And so you have 2 handouts that apply to this agenda item. Mr. Neville, do you mind if I take off my mouse? Sorry. The first one is just what you would see if you approve these budget amendments. And again, it's just taking $811,190 or $39 from unassigned fund balance to assigned fund balance. So that's all that amendment is. We're assigning $811,000 and some change. But let me tell you, the other handout you have looks like this right here, a little table on it. I want to explain that $811,000. I think we did this I know we did this in our last budget meeting during the budget review, but I was off on how much our fund balance would grow this year. If you remember last board meeting, I said we're anticipating $600,000. Well, the Lord blessed us with $811,000. So try to, from the top of this page down, you see unassigned fund balance according to the 18-19 audit. Again, and that was in here, it was just over 1.8 million. And then when our unassigned fund balance according to this audit is just over 2.6 million. Again, that's where that difference of $811,139 comes from. Then I remind you that we have board goal 1.2, where the board had the goal that we would increase our fund balance to 4 months operating in 3 to 5 years. Again, the Lord has blessed us, and we've done it in 2.5. So this is my calculation for 4 months operating. In our 2021 budget that we passed, we have total expenditures of just over 5.6 million. I took that and divided it by 12, and that would give us our estimated monthly expenditures of $467,000 and some change. So I took that monthly expenditure, multiplied it by 4, because that's what the board goal is talking about, is 4 months. And you see it's at 1.868. So that's what we would need in our unassigned fund balance to be at 4 months operating. If you look back up at the very first number, we're over that. We're just under that number by almost $1,000 or something like that, maybe $1,500. So we have 4 months operating in unassigned already. That would allow us to use or assign the full $811,139. And then you can see we have our table there, and this is from our last little budget review in the last board meeting. Again, we know that our sewage lift station is getting old. We also know the city's making great strides with the sewage system. So what we want to do is set that money aside in case we have to replace our sewage lift station before the sewage system is put in. So that money's there if we have to do that. We've been talking about a new gym floor for quite some time now. If you remember, I shared with you board members some information, even pictures from Navasota, who's replaced 3 gym floors this past year, and $150,000 should cover that project for us. Then we have the employee retention allotment. Last board meeting, that was, yes, sir.
I have a question about that floor.
Yes.
Is our roof, is it beginning to work?
It may be, we'll obviously want to check that before we put a new floor in. And good question, Coach, but what we would do is if that roof still needed to be repaired, we would take that out of other capital improvements. So you see we have $311,000 there. But yeah, we want to make sure we put the horse before the cart. And so we want to make sure that roof is good before we put a beautiful new floor in there. Good question. But we'll have money set aside. So that $311,000 you see at the bottom of the table in other capital improvements, that's where we could cover that expense. Back to the employee retention allotment, you can see that's changed by $25,000. Last month it was at $50,000. I had a recommendation from Mr. Pointer this afternoon. I shared that with you guys in an email. I thought that was an excellent idea, and so that's why I've changed that amount. That additional $25,000 has come out of the other capital improvements. And then we have Reading Academies, $25,000 set aside for that. In case the new legislature doesn't do away with it, we have our expense covered and can send our teachers to that. So again, that's where the $811,139 going from unassigned to assigned. Once it's in that assigned fund balance, that's for now how we would plan on spending it. Obviously, the $311,000 in other capital improvements, we're taking that to our facilities committee, obviously the community, parents, teachers, and so forth, and we'll start getting some direction on that as well. So with that said, we have the budget amendment. If the board would choose to take action on that.
Okay, we need a motion and a second, and we will open it for discussion. If there's any other discussion on that, so with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I think Ms. Harvey made a motion, is that correct, Sean? Yes, sir.
I'll second.
Motion by Tammy and a second, I couldn't see who it
That was Mr. Pointer.
Okay, second by Mr. Pointer. Now open for discussion.
So I do have one question. You said the other capital improvements, that's going to be directed by the facilities committee, correct?
Primarily, yes, sir.
Because one thing that I would love,
Yes, sir, recommendation.
yeah, one thing that I would love to see there is audio, video situations so that we can get these recorded and put online and hear.
Yes, sir. We, and speaking of that, we can spend some more money on it. We do have our own camera recording,
Yeah.
and we have adjusted our website, so these recordings are going on our website.
I saw them and they're great. But what we see is 5 minutes of whoever was speaking on Zoom, we can hear, and there's 5 minutes of silence because they can't hear us. And we can't hear the audience when they talk. So, you know, I'd love to see some of that money put aside because I think it's a great idea to put that stuff online, but it doesn't do much good if we can't hear it.
Absolutely. And you're on that facilities committee,
Yes, I
correct?
know.
All right. So we can take that to that committee, the both of us.
Any further discussion? Okay, no discussion, those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Item number 6.
Item number 6, we have talked about this, we've been talking about this for a while. It's finally come to fruition. I sent an email about this with some details to the board members. I think this is a great thing for our employees. I'm just asking that the board approve the use of employee retention allotment in the manner I explained in my last email this evening. And then that would be explained to faculty and staff first thing in the morning.
Okay, I move to accept the recommendation number 6.
Okay. Mr. Gooch, you made a recommendation.
Second by Tammy.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion? Discussion, those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Any other agenda items on that?
No, sir. No personnel, and nothing for closed session.
Okay. Need a motion to adjourn?
I think everybody made a motion.
Motion and second, all right. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Again, everybody, I apologize for, again, technical difficulties. Miss First, I have all this working so that everything, including our voices and Zoom voices, were coming through the speakers. I show up and screw it up somehow. So we will continue to work on getting that fixed. Board members, I thank you so much, especially for number 6. It's something that's been a dream of ours for 2 years. It feels good to be able to do it. So thank y'all.